Okay, right. Brendan is recording. We are back at Passyunk Avenue here in London. Today, I'm completely blown away by the guest when it comes to the path that they have taken, not just after the military, but before that as well. So this is going to be a challenging one for me.
As a tee-up, it was said of Fred Astaire, the great Fred Astaire, you may or may not know. In his first film, he was reviewed, and the reviewer said, can't act, can't sing, can dance a little. If you know Fred Astaire at all, you will know that he is one of the preemptive dancers that we probably know in our popular culture. What an amazing dancer. So it just goes to show, you can be wrong.
Yeah, we know him because we're over 40.
Yeah, I'm way over 40.
So, that's what I think. It's like, to us, excluding you, Román, like dancing to me is alien. It's not in my comfort zone. Same as singing, same as acting. There's a lot of things not in my comfort zone, to be honest. But I think the younger generation now have been brought up watching Billy Elliot, High School Musical, all these things that have embraced, get up and do it and be positive about it. So I think that there's a definite culture change, and I think we, in our heads now, we're thinking, are people going to leave the military and do dance? Well, we've got a mega example, and I think they will.
You're listening to The Creative Bridge, a podcast to inspire veterans to look to the creative industry for their next career. My name is Alec, and together with Lee and Brendan, we're sitting down with veterans who have already transitioned into creative roles. So join us as we talk about their transitions, the lessons they've learned, and what you could do to follow a similar path.
The Creative Bridge. Enjoy. No spoilers.
So you're listening to the Creative Bridge podcast with the very kind support of Passyunk Avenue and the Soldiers Arts Academy. If you've ever seen one of those programs where they take people from different careers and swap them out for some sort of uncomfortable maybe but comedy value, you can easily imagine the scenario of a soldier being swapped out with a ballet dancer. Bizarrely, for this podcast, the very first thing I'm going to say is that you need to stop listening now. You need to get online and go to watch the film on exit12.com, because it will really put you in a place to understand where we're coming from today. Today's guest was a classically trained ballet dancer before enlisting with the US Marines in 2001. He served as a machine gunner and a fire team leader during tours in Iraq. And when he left the military, he founded Exit 12 Dance Company to tell veteran stories through dance. He provided production support to the critically acclaimed play Soldiers On, the UK tour, including a 6-week run on the West End. This is a long list of accolade, and it's incredible. He helped deliver the first UK Veterans Art Festival alongside the 2019 UK Invictus Trials in Sheffield. And alongside all of that, he's found time to study for his PhD, investigating the military human through the arts at York St John's University here in the UK. He's the recipient of the 2020 scholarship to that same university, the 2019 Selma Gina Cohen Dance Lecture Award, 2017-2018 US-UK Fulbright Postgraduate Award, and at the Trinity Laban Conservatoire in London, a 2018 Hill Vet nominee, 2015 New York State Veterans Hall of Fame inductee, 2014 Art and Healing Network awardee. And alongside all of that, he is serving as a fellow with the Veterans in Global Leadership, The Mission Continues, and Iraq-Afghanistan Veterans of America. It's a very great pleasure, Román, to invite you on and to welcome you to this podcast.
Thanks for having me.
It's we're going to start off with Brendan's belt-fed quiz, and I think for a machine gunner, belt-fed will be something you're comfortable with.
Let's do it.
Are you ready, Brendan?
I'm always ready.
I'll start your countdown then.
Land, sea or air?
Air.
Who would play you in a movie?
Ralph Macchio.
Yes. What's your biggest achievement?
Being able to navigate the tube successfully.
One thing that annoys you?
Americanisms.
Sorry. What advice would you give yourself if you could go back in time the day you left the military?
Do everything you did.
Oh, is that it?
No, keep going.
Okay, in front or behind the camera?
Camera.
When are you happiest?
Oh, when I'm hanging out with my wife and my cat.
Nice. Book, comic, or magazine?
Comic.
Shell scrape, cabin, or hotel?
Cabin.
All day long. Where will you be in 10 years?
Oh, wow. The moon, hopefully. That'd be fun. Dancing on the moon.
Brew or wet? You're not going to get this one, oh dear.
Brew?
Brew or wet? That's what we use for the Navy call their cups of coffee and tea wet. Army call them, so you're definitely going to be wet on you and brew. I knew it would be wasted on you. But that's my fault for not thinking before I spoke, as usual.
No worries.
Yeah, cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
Dancing on the moon, that's going to be, you're going to have to make friends with Elon Musk, I think.
Or Space Force, right?
Yeah. So we've always come at this podcast from a position that people in the military are more creative than they maybe give themselves credit for, maybe that they expect. And you've almost come from this. You've come from this from the same direction, but even further back. You were a creative person that came into the military and then returned to creativity. So did you find that you had to become something else in order to be in the military? When you left, did you feel that you had to leave the military to get back to creativity?
Addressing your first question, I think definitely I had to become something else, almost to a fault, where I thought that I had to overly embrace the military way of being. I had to learn how to think differently, operate differently, move differently, and then have different motivations and intentions than when I was an artist. Looking forward, getting out of the military, it wasn't my decision to go back to the arts. It was a prodding from someone I loved, someone who cared about me, who saw that military way of being detrimental to who I wanted to be as a person outside of the military, and who said, how do we get you back there? How do we get you back to that person before the military that was happy-go-lucky, embraced life, and had this fervor for creation? And for me, that was going back into the creative arts.
So when you left then, you didn't leave with that in your mind. You didn't think, I'm leaving and I'm going to go back to that. Were you planning on doing something else? There
was a little bit of that. When we were in Fallujah, I was deployed to Fallujah, Iraq, right before I got out of the Marine Corps. And my roommate and I would talk about the fact that I was a dancer, and then we were putting together these fantastical scenarios of choreography that I wanted to create when I got back home. But again, that was just it was done to pass the time. It was done to transport ourselves out of this war zone that we were in to someplace that was interesting and creative. Mm-hmm. And it was something that would have been interesting to do, I think, coming out of the military. But right when I got out of the military, that wasn't my direction. No.
Where were you heading when you came out of the military?
I don't know. I don't know if you two had this experience, but I felt that when I got out of the military and out of serving in a war, I thought that was this big landmark moment where I had to start being responsible in my life. And I was very conflicted on what to do. And so I looked at my grandfather's example. My grandfather is an Army veteran who served in the Korean War, U.S.-led Korean War. And when he got out of the military, he bought a house, he settled down with my grandmother, started a family, got a really good job with the U.S. Post Office. And I thought, that's what responsible people do. So I got a good job. I bought a condo, couldn't afford a house, with my combat pay, and settled down with my girlfriend and decided to kind of trudge forward in what I categorized as responsible.
Yeah, I pretty much tried to do a similar thing. I didn't want to buy a house, but I ended up moving to America actually for a summer and loving it so much I didn't come back for 25 years. And again, I reiterate, I had no clue what the Roman calendar worked like, so it was a long summer for me. But in that period of time, I did find those struggles, and I think every ex-military person at some point finds a bit of a struggle in at least some area of their life. And it was only years down the road where I was talking to someone, the conversation you were having in the military, only as a civilian, and she said, oh, we're doing this production. We fundraise every year for the hospital, and we make about $20,000, and it's directed by a professional director from, the West End. You should, or Broadway. You should go and, audition. And I was like, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And that's what we were talking about. So I ended up dancing and singing at a really basic level. But that was my intro to theatre, and I loved it. I unashamedly, and I can say this at my age because I don't really care what people think about me at that level, I cried like a baby when that was over. Because it was just, it was that family you went to after you were in the military.
Absolutely.
It's that intensity of experience as well, though, isn't it? It's one of the things I think, military training is deliberately difficult. It's arduous. But in doing it, you form bonds with people around you, but immediately you have a very similar bond with other people that have gone through that similar experience. It's that shared, and a performance, putting on a show, is that same level of intensity of shared experience, which gives you a bond. Very quickly, I would say that I think for most people when they leave the military, there are paths that are fairly well defined. So if you have been commissioned, you were an officer, then the chances are that you'll be pushed towards big consultancy firms, working in the city, in the finance. That network is there, the paths are well trodden, and there are various themes on that. Or you will take your practical skills. You were a driver, you were an engineer, there are driving jobs or engineering jobs, off you go. That's the obvious step. Yep. And they are great steps for very many people, but these are the other steps. So the question then that really sort of follows on from that is, we're saying that there's creativity in the military, that people just maybe don't see themselves. Did you find yourself looking around at all of your peers, the people that you work with, thinking, you would be great on stage, you've got an eye for this, you should be doing that? Were you looking around and seeing all these creative people around you who were just maybe in the wrong place to be creative or not seeing themselves that way? Did you see that, or is that...
Oh, good Lord, no. It was actually the opposite. I was like, if this is the proper way of flipping that on its head, I was more so looking at myself being, how do I exist in this arena?
Yeah.
How do I exist and excel in these things that are so alien to me, and where everyone else that I was looking at seemed to fit?
Yeah.
They seemed to find their place. They seemed to excel. And yet I, kind of reflecting on my own experience in the moment, saw myself really struggling. It wasn't until Fallujah that I started to look at my fellow Marines as true comrades, true friends that I could trust, and that I could share my past life with, my dancing, my performing, my creativity. And when I did that, then they started to stand up and say, we want to participate in some way. The roommate I told you about ended up doing a couple of my performances in New York, and was spectacular on stage.
Was there a time when you moved from being this almost too creative to be entirely comfortable in that military environment? Is there now a situation where you're maybe a little too military to be entirely comfortable in a creative environment? But have there been times when you have felt like you are the right person in the right place, entirely, in equilibrium? And you mentioned that, Fallujah, you were coming up with these fantastical ideas. Was that a moment of almost a flow experience, being the right person in the right place at the right time?
One of the things I enjoyed while you were asking that question is the images and the opportunity to reflect on your question in real time as you were asking it. And I realized that, no, I always felt like I was playing either catch up, or that I had realized the answer to that question too late. So when I was a ballet dancer getting into the Marine Corps, I'm in the Marine Corps and I'm going, wow, I just gained all this strength and this, going to the gym all the time and learning how to properly prepare my body for physicality. I wish I would have learned that when I was a ballet dancer. And then being in the military, I'm in Fallujah and I'm trying to connect with people in Iraq, the locals, about art and talk to them about dance. One of our translators was a hip hop dancer. He ended up having a dance off with one of our chief warrant officers in the barracks one day. And I'm like, wow, you know, I there's so much art that I just want to like investigate and experience while I'm here. And then getting out of the military and going back into dance, I'm like, wow, there's all these opportunities in the military that I missed when I was in that I could have taken advantage of. And now, you know, it's the dog chasing his tail. And, you know, where do I put my efforts? Where do I put my energy? And how do I continue to contribute positively?
Watching through the videos, you said that you can't, the thing that really struck me is you can't put veterans in a box and say that this is what they are.
I think there's multiple levels of where that came from. I think one level is being in Fallujah, being in war, being in this place where there was violence everywhere, and everyone had a singular mission of making Iraq a better place. And whether that was through violence or through humanitarian efforts, everyone was laser focused on it. But then you hear the news from back home, and you hear that everyone is just kind of going about their day to day as if nothing was going on in the world.
Yeah.
And then the second thing is coming back home and seeing how everyone in society, and I'm overgeneralizing, but most people in society were categorizing veterans as these bloodthirsty killers, these robots who were trained to kill, that have no other skills, no other desires, and no other drive in life. And when you investigate deeper, like Lee was saying, you uncover these veterans that want to write poetry, that want to create plays, that want to sing or write music, that want to dance. And at first glance, you wouldn't know that from seeing a veteran's license plate or an old uniform. But from sitting down and hearing somebody's story and hearing their wants and desires for the future, you uncover the most amazing things.
We're talking about veterans going into dance. Is it realistically accessible for me, crusty old W02 veteran, to get up, you know, and go and bang out some shapes, as I would call it, or do something more classical or ballroom or something, you know? And if I can do that, can I make money? Can I make it a career, my next career?
I'm so glad you asked that question. Dance is such a bad word. When you ask people to come and get on the floor with me and dance, not only military people, but the average person is going to freeze up and they're going to say the same thing. I can't dance. I'm going to offer to you that we were all dancers. When we were 2-3 years old, right after we learned to walk, we all danced. Music would go on and we'd all go crazy. Military individuals, if you think about military training, the whole of military training is nothing more than learning choreographed movements done together with a group and performed in a theater. Granted, it's the theater of war, but there is a performance. You are getting ready for something that you were going to go do, that you've rehearsed for, that you've trained for, that you've learned movements for. So my answer to you would be yes. It probably wouldn't be what you hold in your mind as dancing. But if you're thinking about choreographed movements of communicating things that are important for people to know through movement, then yes, we can put you on stage. We can give you choreographed movements to affect audiences in a real, tangible way.
You've genuinely put hope in my heart now. I feel confident to go.
Yeah,
no,
and
great.
then if you want to just have a night out dancing, we'll just give you alcohol, and then we'll pull you on the dance
No,
floor.
everyone knows not to do that with me.
God, no! It's like a squid with 7 tentacles.
But you, Lee, when you didn't have dance training, did you, as a young person?
No.
Prior to, or even in the military. But
Well,
when you left,
Oddly enough, you say that. One of the things that they taught over here, and I am old enough, is they taught round dancing, which is a very similar thing to square.
Absolutely,
Yeah, and so we taught that in school, the floral dance and all sorts of things like that, which I'm sure we're all,
country dancing.
Yeah, almost, yeah. So actually, when I got to studying at RADA, I was the only person who could actually do that and it was purely a generational thing. I'm not a great dancer. I'm certainly not bragging about my abilities. But when it came to that, that was something that I went, oh my God, this is like ingrained in my person. But yeah, you're right. What happened was I ended up auditioning for Guys and Dolls. I ended up getting into that as a character, Brannigan. And I was so scared because but it's that similar type of thing, like Román was just saying. But I get there and I'm scared out of my wits. I'm on stage for the first time, you know. Well, what they had us doing was dancing, and there's a great number in it, Sit Down, You're Rocking the Boat. On the second full weekend, we did 4 shows. We stopped the show to a standing ovation every single time at the bottom of Sit Down, You're Rocking the Boat. We had no idea what to do.
Oh, that's a great
number. And it
number.
was this amazing number, and when they choreographed it, and for amateur dramatics, but the thrill of that, I've got to tell you guys, if you're even, you know, what you've got to do is get to the end of that first number and you go, oh my God, this is amazing. But yeah, no formal training. And I think what I did is I ended up going out of that because I think I probably got intimidated once I started to get into professional theatre and saw the real dancers and thought, it's easier to be the leading man.
Yeah.
And to me, it seemed easier. I don't know that to be true, but yeah. And so I was in several productions. I danced in all of them. I sang in all of them, and I acted in all of them, and it was amazing. And then, yeah.
So, Román, your focus seems to be very much on education and therapy. That's what I've pulled, is education, helping members of the public to share some of the experience of veterans. So the education part. And then I've seen the videos where you've been working with veterans all the way from Vietnam era all the way through to modern Iraq, Afghanistan veterans as well. Is there a professional development avenue as well? So if you've gone through the therapy side and you want to take it further, or if you're just coming straight into it and thinking, this is, I want to be able to do this and I want to be able to do it professionally, is there an avenue there as well that you're aware of?
Absolutely. I absolutely think there is. I think it's difficult, but I think it's there. There are several organizations, not only in the US, but in the UK, that have opened up their doors to veterans who want to come in and want to participate in the creative arts, and then will help them to get closer to launching a professional career. I have to be honest with you, it's not easy. It's something that, you know, with all the accolades that you were mentioning in the introduction, I got a sly smile because, you know, still hustling, still trying to make a professional career and still trying to figure out what that means. So it's not going to be easy, but there are a lot of organizations that are out there to help, at least to kind of create that bridge.
As I mentioned before, this is out of my comfort zone. And what I mean by that is I've never gone and watched a full ballet performance. And my wife is always staggered by my complete ignorance of the subject. But I remember there was a recent pop song that came out, which is "Take Me to Church."
Yes,
was done with a piece, and I could appreciate it for its physical endeavor and for the skill that it took. But the thing that I didn't get, and I think for me this is maybe the barrier. I was hoping you might be able to give me some tips. Is I didn't understand the language that was being spoken by the movements. I couldn't pick up cues to say that is what they're trying to convey when they're doing this particular movement. Is there a language there that exists, or do you really have to go to an emotional place to try and understand the emotions that the dancer is conveying? I'm rather hoping you give me a translation guide.
Oh, absolutely.
I just pause.
Yeah.
I just pause. Just do a restart.
Oh,
and then
I'll do the same as well then.
Sorry. Yeah, that was perfect. You're like 58, 59, then you stopped. I was like, yes. I was like,
I didn't see it at all. So that's the question, really. Is there a translation guide to help me to understand ballet, to make it maybe a little bit more accessible? Dance, full stop. Let's not just restrict it.
I'm very leery about kind of giving you advice on 2 levels, because I know how inaccessible classical ballet is, especially if you have no history with it. And I think it's one thing that we've tried to push against in making our movement, making our stories, making our performances a lot more accessible to the layperson, especially to military individuals who we want to come see the performance so that they can invite people that may not understand their experiences to it, so it can help them along. And then we can engage in conversations about war on a very tangible, in a very safe and tangible place. To answer your question, for classical ballet, I think it's a mix of, one, selecting the performances that are more accessible. English National Ballet just did a version of an old classical ballet called Raymonda, and they based it on the Crimean War and made the lead character Florence Nightingale, and did this production about war and how people experience it, how they conduct themselves within it, and the impact of war on people. And I think the second thing is, one is selecting productions that you have a window into, that you can apply meaning to. And it's up to you to do that. And then two, every performance has a program. And so I usually wait until the first half of the production, check out the program and see if it aligns with how I'm kind of connecting with it or responding to it. Yeah. Those are my suggestions. May or may not work.
Is it in the similar vein to Shakespeare? And I stay with me, guys, if you're listening. We're not going to go into a big Shakespeare breakdown, except to say that, out of the 37-odd plays that Shakespeare wrote, some are so much more accessible. I mean, I'll give you a couple. Henry V, definitely for the military, Macbeth. Much Ado About Nothing, so accessible for that. It's a story about, love and romance and somebody getting dissed and there's some guy on the other end is manipulating everybody else. And you put it in World War II or you put it in present day and everybody gets to access it that way. But if you go to some of the other ones that are a bit more obscure and you're just like, oh my God, I need to know about Shakespeare and the text in order to even begin to understand this flipping thing. And I'm never going to be able to make, well, not to me, someone's going to correct me, but I don't know how I would make Cymbeline in a present day, Is that what you find with dance? Or is that what you're saying in the ballet? The some are just simply more accessible and we know them and it's in our psyche, and others you need that sort of almost an education and an experience in order to get there.
I do think you're hitting the nail on the head in one sense, but you're also alluding to something that is really important. So Shakespeare is a great example and a great parallel to classical ballet. In a lot of scenarios, the language, the vocabulary used is inaccessible to a lot of modern day individuals. And so it can take putting it in the present day to create that connection point, or a little bit of study to get to the level where you can have a window into what's happening, or completely transforming it into something else that has more accessible language that people can connect with and still get the story that Shakespeare was intending.
I'm just going to take a 2-second pause here because we're about to lose our veteran photographer who's come along for the day, Adam Blackmore-Heel. Check him out. What's your Instagram? At Blackmore-Heel. Check it out. Veteran photographer based here in London. Absolutely fabulous and supported us today very kindly. So, Adam, thank you very much for your time.
Thanks for the plug.
Nice to see you.
Thank you, Adam.
Thanks, Adam.
We'll edit that out, but...
No, we won't.
No, we won't.
On a quick, not anecdote, you started though in hip hop, didn't you? Unless I'm wrong, or you started in more sort of what would when I was looking at TikTok, you started in the version of that before TikTok. So
It was a long time ago, Lee. I actually started a little closer to your experience. So I did start taking hip hop, jazz, and ballet, but my first performance was in a musical.
right, what was the musical?
7 Brides for 7
Oh,
Brothers.
okay, yeah, classic, had to be there.
So we've talked about what it was like for you going from the arts into the military, coming back to arts. We've talked a little bit about the therapeutic applications, how people might look to move professionally. We've talked a little bit about the language of, should we call it choreographed movement? Is that another way of phrasing it? Because you've said...
That's the word. Those are the words we lean towards now, yeah.
Okay. So,
right.
So choreographed movement, which should be, if you are a drill instructor out there, if you've run parades and everything else, then it sounds like you're halfway through the battle already in terms of choreographing movement. Go forward, you left the military, you had that moment of time where you said, what am I going to do? And then you set up Exit 12, which is a professional dance company. You've performed in New York, in the UK. How much of what you do now is, I'll go back to that old term, dancing. How much of it is running a dance company? And by that, I mean both meanings of the word, the people who are performing and the actual company in a business sense of the word. How much of that is being a business person now?
A lot of it is. Exit 12 Dance Company is what we call in the US a project-based company. So it'll pop up for a project, and that'll kind of, all of the members will disperse for a little while until we have another project. But like you said, there's very little artistic work that I do that isn't outweighed by the administrative. So a lot of the work is, and I'll just give you an example, like this past quarter from November to now, there's been no artistic work that's been going on, but there's been work in the background. We applied for 2 grants. There's an initiative in the US called Creative Forces that's putting together a lot of art and healing in the direction of the military experience. So we put together a proposal for that. We put together another proposal for a granting organization out of New York City to do some work with veterans. And then we went to a major performing arts conference to get partners to come on board to present our works more places. So a lot, actually.
I think I'd add in there something, because it's spurred on by a comment that you made, Alec, about leaving the military as an officer. And I'm not just suggesting it's only an officer who would do this, but, so if you're leaving the military and you're thinking going into banking and writing and doing it in that sense, why not do that in the arts? Because one of the things that we keep saying is we're not just talking about acting, dancing, and the general disciplines. There is so much in the arts. You could love dance, not know how to do it, never want to get on stage, but support that company by being a grant writer or by being someone who is the driving force behind getting it going. I just wanted to throw that in because it sort of stuck out when you were talking about your exit from the Navy.
This is one of the things that, there are the jobs that are, to put it bluntly, there are the jobs that are in front of the camera.
Yep.
There are the jobs that are behind the camera, and then there are the jobs that are behind the person behind the camera.
Yeah.
So,
it's just like the military, right? You have that one person holding the rifle going down range, and you have hundreds of thousands of people behind him supporting that effort.
We've spoken to a few people now, veterans who've gone into various things. We've had somebody who has come on who's now an actor. We've had somebody who's come on who is a military advisor to films. And one of the things, you nearly said it just then, I was rather hoping you were going to, was the idea that if you said to a veteran or a service leaver, have you considered the creative industry, and I mean everybody involved in that, as a sector for employment, the likelihood is no. The answer is probably going to be no. But then everybody that we've spoken to, Tip said it, Ben said it, is that they got on set, you call it whatever set you want, and they recognized it as a military operation. Does that ring true to you? Is that your experience as well? You have to say yes now.
Yes, absolutely. Well, there's an asterisk at the end of that yes. When I got out of the military, I definitely approached the dance company in that way. And I was like, if I can employ everything I learned in the military, leadership, organization, perseverance, determination, then I can actually build this and make this idea a reality, which was really good in a lot of senses. Like, perseverance and determination got us connections that we probably wouldn't have gotten otherwise. The organization and the leadership definitely helped me build the administrativia that put the company together. But then if you take leadership styles of the military and try to combine that with the way creatives work, I failed horribly. Just imagine making dancers cry and having dancers walk out because you're trying to be domineering and have military go get up and go. And so I had to soften a couple areas to be able to work in the creatives.
Just tone it down.
I'll tell you a funny story. So one of the things I realized recently was the unbelievable unabashedness I had when I left the military. And it has to do with your story at the Y. So I came out of the military. I wanted to, and this is when I decided to start the dance company. I knew that I had to get into the creative industry in as many ways as possible to learn how to do this. And so one of the things I knew I had to do was I had to start teaching dance. So I had to be standing in front of the studio, instructing people how to do it so that I could kind of do that choreographically as well. So I wrote this email and sent it to every dance studio in a 100-mile radius of where I lived so that someone would hire me as a dance teacher. And I opened this email like a couple of weeks ago, and I after reading this email, I would never have hired me. It basically said like, hey, I'm this U.S. Marine, Iraq War veteran. I just got back from Fallujah, and I want to come to your school and teach your kids ballet. Like, who says yes to that? Yeah. The good news is somebody did. I ended up teaching ballet to some young kids. And the funniest thing, like you were saying with the Y, I would make them do the craziest stuff. We would, if they talked too much in class, they would automatically get 10 push-ups. They ended up enjoying that, so they'd talk more and get more push-ups. And then there was one epic class where I wanted to strengthen their arms. So I got 1 pound weights and tape, and I taped it to their wrists, 1 pound in each hand, so that as they were dancing, they had to move these 1 pound weights around.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I don't think that would be possible today.
We were talking about the fact that you had all these people who'd had military experience, Second World War, blah, 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 came in, they looked like they should hold a weapon on film. There was reality that came with it. And as Lee says, that disappeared off in the 80s. And as we were talking this morning, before you arrived, we looked back at how television in particular used to be. So you would have Frank Sinatra and these actors who would sing and do dance routines and act, and they were a full gambit. And Morecambe and Wise in the UK, and the idea of these all-round performers. And then in the sort of 60s, 70s, 80s, it seemed that slowly ebbed away and people became super specialists. I'm an actor, I'm a singer, I'm a dancer. The three areas didn't mix. Now there seems to be, we've got Mamma Mia coming back, and suddenly Pierce Brosnan is doing dance routines and singing and everything else. And 10 years ago, I wouldn't have imagined that. So are we seeing that, and are we seeing that sort of resurgence of the all-round performer coming back? And are you seeing that as people come through? Is there a greater diversity in your classes?
My goodness, I hope so. I think there is nothing but benefit to gain from being an all-around performer and experiencing the differences. I mean, as you were talking about Mamma Mia, I was thinking of Hugh Jackman, the Wolverine,
yes,
who has a viral clip of being in Music Man. And I'm like, Wolverine's on stage singing and dancing in Music Man? That's incredible. And I think it adds a layer of authenticity and realness to the actor. I mean, and I'll segue that with also, like, I think the contrasting experiences of individuals really emboldens and makes the performer richer. If you think of Robin Williams, one of the great comedians of all times, who is also one of the greatest dramatic actors I've ever seen.
Absolutely.
And you just see that balance by having experienced both ends of the fulcrums.
And a great singer too. I mean,
I've never heard him sing.
Yeah, he did. Well, when he did Aladdin, he sang all the songs.
Did he really?
Yeah, he was.
Oh, wow.
He, the genie.
That.
He sang the songs for Aladdin. Character style. Yeah. You wouldn't have put him in an opera maybe, but you're absolutely right. And I guess that would be in my encouragement. I always like to try and give encouragement to people who are listening. As we said before, absolutely no disrespect, because I wanted to take ballet. I was born in the 50s, and I'm pre-Billy Elliot, so that wasn't open to me. But don't think you have to do that to be in the creative arts. It's just so many. And what it is, going back to what you were saying about the video that we watched, with Exit 12, it's the expression of something that you're doing, and that's where the choreographed movement comes in. Just pure dance. We did the ballroom dance for My Fair Lady. Kicked up a fuss when we had to do it as actors, and then whinged forever when they had to take that out to shorten the play. We're like, what?
We've spent so much time trying to figure out how
Weeks,
to do that.
man, weeks. It took 6 weeks to learn that.
That's horrible.
But yeah, it was. We were crying.
That's what they said about his dancing.
Yeah, well, yeah. But
That's why they took it out.
all right, the cat's out of the bag. But you're right. It did broaden my experience and my skills and everything else as an actor first, a singer second, and then a dancer third. And it made that whole thing make more sense to me.
Another 2 questions, if I may, before we've got a couple of questions from members of the audience. I suppose it's rather a pretentious way of saying it, but people who've been listening in and following what we're doing. You've already touched upon it a little bit. Transferable skills for you then, leaving the military and then setting up a company. I'll let you answer that, how you, in the terms of whichever company you wish to answer that. Does that make sense? What would you think those were, and are they specific to you, or are they general to most people?
I'll tell you, one of the things that we do a lot of work with military veterans. And when we started doing workshops with military veterans, it was focused on exactly that. We were focused on using movement and creativity and choreography as a way to embolden veterans, get them to self-affirm, get them to work on teamwork, collaboration, all of these skills that they could put to use in other areas, right? And the amazing thing is yes, all of that happened. But the most incredible thing happened alongside of that is we asked veterans coming out of our creative workshops, what was the benefit of that? And expecting to get, I learned how to work with other people better, or I found that I could do something and put my effort in and see a product. But that's not what most of them reported. Most of them reported feeling like, wow, I just did that with a bunch of other people. I wonder what else I can do. Yeah. And they all went out and did something they never thought was possible. And it happened on a very small level, where some of them went out and started to volunteer with veterans organizations or become a peer veteran counselor for veterans in their hometown, or on a very large level where they were starting organizations to help veterans in policy, in government. And it was pretty spectacular. And I think that's one of the things I'm looking at now is when an individual engages with the creative arts, it not only opens up their imagination and creativity within that space, it opens up imagination, creativity, and motivation in their life.
I think this is really important to me, because you've said something there that might actually clear up something I've been struggling with for all of the time since I left. Maybe not struggling in a bad way. Military people are incredibly passionate about the job, about the task, about who's, the best regiment and all of that. When we leave, we have nowhere to focus that passion. Where do you put that passion? And I found it in theatre. It's the best decision that I ever made, was to give up a lucrative career as a restaurant manager, and say, I'm going back to college, and this is what I've always wanted to do, and this is what I'm doing right now with you guys. Not to get too warm and fuzzy, but it's just a joy to me. So is that something you found, that maybe they're taking that passion and you're giving them an outlet for the passion alone?
I think you're landing on something that is very important to the veteran experience. When people get out of the military, they ultimately lose 2 things. They lose that component that you were talking about, that group of people around them where they can collectively do something important, but they also lose that voice above them that is pushing them in directions career-wise. So everyone in the military gets a mentor, usually. It could be your sergeant who's like, you should probably sign up for this course because this would be good for you. If you're an officer, you have an officer kind of pushing you in the direction of jobs that are important. And when you get out of the military, that doesn't exist. And so one of the most important things, not only in the creative industries, but is for a veteran to find something where they can deposit that passion. And it's different for everyone. For some people like Lee and I, it's the creative industries. It could be in film. It could be in mountaineering. It could be in gardening. But there is a place where veterans can find that group again that are focused on
the purpose,
making something better.
Your tribe. Yeah, your tribe.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You've got to find your tribe.
Yeah.
You? Yeah.
That's great. That's my black couch moment. I'm feeling good. I needed that. I've just gone like, oh, the penny's dropped. I've got no one telling me what to do.
Well, there's a new rookie in civilian life over there, Brendan. Did you find that when you left, you suddenly lost that tribe that was so familiar to you?
I'm still lost.
We were talking about this yesterday, though, weren't we?
Yeah,
and it was the nice thing about going back to do the BFBS course. Was it was a step back into familiar environment in terms of the people around you had that shared experience. They learned how to do the dance that you knew how to do, and you could immediately relate to them in that manner. So, I think you're always, and it's why it's nice to go back to a military reunion. It's why it's nice to go back into a service bar. Because it's almost a little bit of a holiday. You go back and you can just relax into what
nostalgia.
Nostalgia.
I can see that
which
now.
is good. But one of the wonderful things about today's veterans is that they're taking that a step further. Is that they're putting that energy into things that are positive for the world.
Yeah. You still have to be a part of society, and if you only go back to reunions and service bars, then you are being apart from that society you want to be into. So here's the question then. We've gone through your sort of post-military career. We've talked about Exit 12. We've talked about the collaborations you've done with Soldiers Arts Academy and all of the PhD research and everything else that you're doing at the moment. What is next for you? You know, what is the next 12 years look like? Because we sat here and thought, my goodness, there's not much. We need more pages to add to this. So what are you planning? What's coming next? What can we look forward to?
I think the big answer for that is we want to create more performances that get people in a room together talking about things that affect the world. And for us, particularly, war is that thing we want to talk about. And whatever that means is what the next 12 years looks like, whether it's creating performances, working with more veterans, going to crazy places and doing workshops. We have connections to the Ukraine. We have connections to Germany. Of course, connections here in the UK and the US. And putting ourselves in front of veterans so that we can amplify their experiences and bring them to audiences that would never have the opportunity to engage with those experiences in a tangible way, in a remarkable way, where we can have a conversation.
Do you find, really quickly, do you find that you're going in when you're when they're experiencing their combat experience through choreographed movement? My experience with that is I worked with troubled teenagers when I got out in America, and sometimes I felt like I had to come in at their level first and then come down. It was pointless saying, oh, you should become a ballet dancer. Oh, you should talk more kindly to your peers. No, you had to I had to go in with a sort of ferociousness that was at their level and bring them down. If you see, like you said, Alec, when you experience those dancers depicting what was happening to them in war, you immediately related to that because you went, I understand the military speak that's being performed via choreographed movement.
You're hitting the nail on the head. It's
I'm good at
going
this.
into that room, understanding who you're working with. I just worked with the U.S. State Department doing an arts. We were supposed to do an arts trip to Nigeria to work with paramilitary, correction officers, utilizing the arts and what the medium that I work within, which is dance. we ended up doing it on Zoom, but I knew I had to connect at their level. And the minute I logged into Zoom, they portrayed this whole police organization and these police officers walking in full dress regalia. And here I am sitting in front of a camera going, I'm going to get these guys to dance. And I had to come in at their level. So what we did is we connected together on a poem that talked about policing, particularly policing in America. And we read it together. And then we had them write their own poem about their own experiences. And it was really fun for them to talk about the impact that they thought they were having in their community being a police officer. Then we did movement to the poem that I introduced, and then I challenged them to do movement to their own poem. And you should have seen these individuals getting passionate about standing up, having their buddy read their poem while they moved along with it. It was incredible.
Alec, members of our audience.
Yes. Do you know what? I had nearly forgotten. So we've had 2 questions come in. I just wanted to be able to share with you. 3 questions come in. Let me say, it's all by the wonders of modern technology. I've just got to. There we go.
Drum roll, please.
Drum roll. First question. You should hear it through your headphones.
Hi, Roman. Question for you about using U.S. veteran benefits in the U.K. or elsewhere abroad for education and retraining, specifically in the arts. I personally use the post 9/11 GI Bill, but I used it at a global MBA program which had Department of Education recognition, and it was relatively easy. I could imagine that some other smaller arts programs or qualifications may not have that kind of certification from the D of E in the U.S. So if you're trying to do it abroad, it would be easy to do it in the U.S., I suppose. So in the UK, do you know what arts programs have that kind of certification from the Department of Education, and whether you can use post 9/11 GI Bill or just regular GI Bill funds to get an education in the arts?
That's a great question. I'm so glad you asked that, and I've never spoken on this. I did my master's degree here in London at the Trinity Laban Conservatoire of Music and Dance. And the first year, I was awarded a Fulbright Award, which is a cross-cultural collaboration award that paid for the first year of my master's. The second year, I used my GI Bill. And Trinity Laban at the time was not certified so that I could use my GI Bill, but it wasn't a very difficult process to get them through the certification so that I could apply my GI Bill to my second year of my master's degree. And so the answer is not what arts organizations here in the UK can you use your GI Bill with. It's more, can they get certified themselves? And if you're an American, I'm sure you have that American gumption to walk into the registrar's office and help them along the process, get them connected to the paperwork that they have to do, and to get that done so that you can do that here in the UK.
You mentioned the US UK Fulbright, so that presumably is open to UK veterans as well.
The US UK Fulbright Commission goes back and forth, so they award US individuals opportunities to study in the UK, and there is an award for UK individuals to study in the US, and it's not veteran specific.
Okay.
It is open to everyone.
Okay, well, that's one we should definitely link to. But of course, if you are a UK service person looking to do a master's program here in the UK, or possibly even overseas, but you would need to do a little bit more research on that.
Well, I can give you my own personal experience on that, because when I was when I was going through my acting training, it was at an accredited school. And I got to study at RADA for a couple of long courses there, which is also by isn't an accredited school over here, or acting school, but it is considered an accredited school in America. So I could get a student loan to help me, and student financing to help me from America to study in Great Britain. So that might help some other people. I know what GIs and veterans over here are looking for is to be able to utilize what they've been given, which is what is it you guys are given now?
We get LCAS.
LCAS, yeah.
And you can use LCAS towards a master's program here
Amazing.
in the UK. And you probably can use it overseas as well. They
Yes.
will find ways to help you spend that money.
Yep.
I don't mean to trivialize it, but they're there to find ways to help you make the most of those funds without just saying, "Can't blanche off, you go and buy yourself a new car." But if you turn up with a course, they'll help you find the justification for you to use that funding. Right, second question.
Is there anything you brought from your early dance career into the Marines with you and perhaps utilise to be a more productive Marine?
What a great question. I think the funny answer is absolutely. My Russian ballet teachers yelled at me as much or more than my military drill instructors. But I think to really answer the question, absolutely. I think the physicality of being a dancer helped in being physical as a Marine. It was a different way of being physical. I definitely had to alter the way I worked, the exercises that I was doing, the way my body moved, but it definitely helped. I do think there was a drive and a perseverance to always improve personally that laterally moved directly from ballet over into the military. And then there's a way of communicating and a way of being curious about the world around us that definitely helped, especially in Fallujah, of wanting to connect with those around me, which not only helped that investigation and that curiosity that I had, but also helped us operate a lot more safely in that war zone.
This last question is a little out there, and it came from.
Well, so is this podcast.
Yeah, but it's come from
myself.
It's come from a veteran whose children are now doing dance, and that I think that helps to understand where this question. I would like to know if you're doing anything to promote a healthy body image in dance, perhaps taking aspects of military strength and eating into dance now. So I appreciate this is maybe somewhat off topic, but it is coming from a veteran, and I think it's still a very topical concern.
Absolutely. I think to answer your question, there's a lot of organizations, us included, that promote a healthy image of a dancer that eats enough calories to be able to do the physical work that they're called to do, and a dancer who cross-trains in order to prepare their body for the brutal impact of dancing. And I'll give you an example. So when I was teaching these young kids that I was talking about earlier in the podcast, I also ran a 2-week program for them over the summer when they weren't specifically signed up to dance, where we would do half a day dancing, and then we would do half a day cross training, and we would grab the kettlebells, we would grab the weights, we would grab a box and do box jumps, and then we'd go outside and we'd run a couple miles just to prepare their bodies for the things that their bodies would be called to do in the ballet studio.
So that was almost taking some aspects of military boot camp training. Is that fair to say? And then
absolutely,
and then introducing it.
We did a military cadence as we ran.
Right.
We kind of polished it to be ballet like. It was fun.
Wasn't from Stripes or any chance? Was it?
No. We totally rewrote it to talk about point shoes and tights.
I have to say, I really enjoyed your TEDx talk down in San Antonio. And I loved the part right at the beginning where you said, as a newly formed Marine, you snapped to attention and asked permission to speak, which is so, typical of what we envision of Audie Murphy, in the American Marines, And I know it's not like that all the time. And you promptly handed over to your drill sergeant, who was this hairy-ass drill sergeant, an envelope containing what?
It was a black and white photo of me in the production of Sleeping Beauty in tights and a tunic, partnering a beautiful ballerina in a ornate tutu, or that dress that ballerinas wear.
And he promptly said,
"Oh, Baca, I knew there was something weird about you."
We should have started with that.
Yeah.
We should have started with that. I think that
Yeah. Well, the wonders of editing.
Yeah. Very true. Román, thank you so much for joining us on the Creative Bridge. It's been an absolutely fascinating episode for us. If people do want to find out more about you and or Exit 12, then they simply need to go to exit12danceco.org, or you can find them at Exit 12 Dance Company on Instagram, and I think it's the same on Facebook as well, isn't it? So look it up there. There's tons of good stuff, and in fact, go to Vimeo, go to YouTube, and you'll find even more content there as well. If you haven't yet watched that video, I don't know what you're messing about at. Go and do that now, but click subscribe before you go, because we've got more amazing guests lined up that you're going to love listening to. We will include as many links as we can to the things that we've discussed with Román today. And finally, if you are a veteran working in the creative industry, no matter where that is, whether it's a soft step or a hard step, we'd love to hear from you. So DM us on Creative Bridge, that's Cree and then the number 8, Creative Bridge on Twitter. We'd love to hear what you've been up to. But from us here at Passyunk Avenue, thank you very much for taking the time to listen in.
Thank you, Román. Thank you so much.
Thank you all. This has been very fun.
I'm still blown away by this.
As always, the Creative Bridge is recorded in the basement bar at Passyunk Avenue at Fitzrovia with the kind support of the Soldiers Arts Academy. And I will press stop. Get ready for the complaints, Brendan.